So one thing I get asked a lot is about how I started my practice and how how you would go about starting an art and entertainment practice. And so that's what I thought we would start out talking about. And it's not so much about my experience, but maybe my experience will help to inform you about thinking about whether you want to start your own practice or how you're doing your own practice, that kind of thing. So I graduated from William Mitchell Law School in 1992, sort of at the end of a recession. And it was also a period of time when there were a number of very large firms in the Twin Cities that were sort of imploding. I don't know if anyone remembers Popham Hague, but it kind of melted down just about that time. I interviewed for a summer clerkship there and did not get it. And I think part of it was a inability to get a job in a larger firm, but also I think temperamentally I wasn't the kind of person who wanted to work in a large firm. So just by default, I started my own practice, and I actually started my practice on the porch of my rental apartment in Uptown in Minneapolis.
I think some of us from a certain era of coming out of law school around, say, 2011 can relate.
Right.
Me in particular too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you have your own experience of going out on your own too. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. When I started out, I just was practicing anything. In fact, I was being mentored by a lawyer who had a solo practice in Minneapolis, and he described it as A to Z law. That's what he practiced. Assaults to zoning. Anything that walked in the door, he'd take it. And I quickly realized that's not gonna fly. And I also very quickly realized that I was not a litigator. A friend of mine had gotten a moving traffic violation, and he knew that I had just graduated from law school, so he called me up and said, "Hey, can you come get me out of this traffic violation?" And I think I almost got him thrown in jail. The judge was so upset with me that I think we got out of there alive. But I realized very quickly I was not a litigator too. So knowing your personality is important. Moving forward a couple of years, I ran into a wonderful woman, a woman named Sylvia Strobel, and we started dating, and then we got married. And at that point, I did talk her out of leaving a job that she had at Channel 2 as the deputy legal counsel and joining me in practice. And that's the point when we actually started focusing in on art and entertainment law. And it's really was her focus that brought that. Sylvia had just graduated from, or was in the process of graduating from the Carlson School with an MBA. And her final project was to produce a business plan. And so she wrote a business plan for our law practice. And that's how we got started with that. And in doing that, she looked at who else was practicing in town and the areas of their practices, and realized, based on that and based on her experience working in public television, that we really should focus on film and television. And that's what we did. And everyone asked, why would you do that in Minnesota? Because there was actually a need there. And if you look around the room here, there are a lot of local films that are made, and some of them date back to the mid-1990s when we started our practice. And there really was a growing sort of independent film community growing at that time. So it was a pretty exciting period of time. I also sort of cut my teeth. My sister had decided to get into independent film, and so I helped her, set up the public placement and do all the fundraising for that, and then helped her produce the film. So I kind of cut my teeth on feature film as well. So that brings us up kind of the mid-90s or so, and starting our practice, and the first couple of years were pretty rocky,
Sure.
as you can imagine.
I bet. So there's been a lot of changes in the entertainment world since the 90s. I mean, that was really a big, it had its ups and downs, but there was quite a lot of active filmmaking going on then.
There really was. It was an amazing time.
And it was a period where I think there was a lot more commerce going on too, in certain respects.
Mm-hmm.
But so how have you dealt with those ups and downs as far as marketing your services? And
well, one thing we did is because we had sort of focused on a certain industry,
mm-hmm.
Film and television, and we learned that there was a annual conference out in Washington for documentary filmmakers. And although it was a really expensive thing to do, we actually signed up as one of the sponsors of this. It's called the Real Screen Summit. It's still going on, but we were kind of in on the first couple of years of the Real Screen Summit, and we would have a booth there, and anyone who was attending the conference could come and meet with us and talk about their legal issues and legal needs. And so we met a lot of, actually some of the clients that I still have are from out of that process, and that really sort of focused it.
That's great.
And the other way you market is obviously a lot of networking, a lot of doing presentations in different places, and writing. I used to write little articles for different magazines and things too. So
Sure.
just getting your name out there and letting people know what you do. And I think really the key with it, though, is to find that niche and focus in on that so that you can define who you are.
Right. Right. Do you represent just people working in Minnesota, or is it? I mean, there's a range, right, of clientele that you've got. It's
right.
not just based here.
Yeah. I mean, my practice is sort of I joke about it being an international practice. I actually have clients in England and Canada. I've done work with someone in Australia, South Africa. So it's kind of funny that over the years you meet and work with these people. But part of the story here is that actually in 2005 we picked up and moved out to Pennsylvania, and we were in Pennsylvania for 5 years, and then in 2010 we moved to Maryland, to Baltimore, and we were there for 5 years. And then we came back here, and we've been back here about 2 years or so. So I have moved around, and one of the amazing things about having your own practice, of course, is the ability to pick up and move. And so I have sort of developed clients in those places,
Mm-hmm.
but none of them is as strong as here in Minnesota. It sort of seems like that's where the connections always end up.
Right.
So,
Right. Are there issues working with clients that are that far away or out of state, or?
Well, and in the case of when we moved to Pennsylvania and when we moved to Maryland, I of course needed to get licensed in those jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm.
And while getting licensed in Pennsylvania was a matter of just waving in, sending in a bunch of paperwork. In Maryland, I had been out of law school for 20 years, and in Maryland you actually have to take the bar exam to get licensed. So I spent an entire summer cramming for the Maryland bar, which was a really painful experience.
Oh, I bet.
It doesn't get any easier as you get older. So
Sure.
but I, had to cram the civil and criminal procedure of Maryland, and dog-eared a copy of the court provisions, requirements, and then took the exam, and that was it.
All right.
I was thinking about what is involved in starting your own law practice, and thinking back to when Sylvia and I started ours, and there was a book by a guy named Jay Foonberg. It was How to Start Your Own Law Practice. Some of you might remember it. But there actually is a chapter in there where he describes how you should organize your desk. And it's not a desktop on your computer, it's your desktop.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about where you should put your day calendar so you can write down the time, and where you should keep your files and organize so you can keep track of your clients. I mean, it's hilarious. A coffee cup, you're gonna put the coffee cup in, pens, line the pens up. And he has a diagram, if I remember right. There's a diagram in there about arranging your desk.
This is old school lawyer self-help books.
But it's how it works. I mean, it's how it works.